Hey everyone, Art Burns here, wishing you well today. So, of the many, many numerous benefits of mindfulness and meditation practices, stress reduction, emotional intelligence, and the connection that we have to others, developing connection, whether it's a parent to their children or just, connecting as a person to the other people in your life. These are just a few of the very, very many beneficial outcomes that arise from practicing mindfulness daily and formal meditation daily, right? But the one thing that's common to these benefits and really most other benefits that you could possibly name that come from these practices, the one common benefit to all of these is the way that we are able to develop as a nature, as an instinct, right? The habit and the practice of responding to experiences in our lives as opposed to reacting to those experiences in our lives, right? Anytime, if you look back on any time that you felt yourself, in some kind of, trouble, where you felt like you wanted to unring a bell, right? Like where you just regretted what you did, right? Whether it's, seeing that you spoke too harshly to someone in your life, your children, your spouse, your friend, you said something you wish you could take back, an action that you wish you could take back, just any level of regret in general, and oftentimes any kind of trouble that you find yourself in on any level, right? Almost always this is going to be, the trouble has been caused because we reacted as opposed to responded, right? When we react, it's something we do very immediately. We do so without thinking. We do so without contemplating. We do so without considering. We just do it very quickly, very automatically. And this reaction is often the product of, the various, sort of implicit biases that we have, the implicit memories we have, the trauma that we've experienced in our lives, the influence that other people have had on us, and these things are, of course, in the form of emotions like shame and guilt and anger even, and just sort of feelings of whatever those feelings might be, right? And so that's where we get ourselves into trouble, right? And that's why I talk a lot about emotional regulation. And that's really what we're talking about here, right? The ability to regulate ourselves so that we don't, react to something, automatically without considering how it's going to affect the rest of those around us, right? So instead of slamming the door, we take we understand what slamming the door is going to do, and instead we close the door and walk away peacefully, right? That's the idea anyway, right? And so so there's a really great quote. The psychologist, Holocaust survivor turned psychologist named Viktor Frankl has this amazing quote that I like to share with my clients all the time, because this really talks to how mindfulness and meditation works in our body and in our lives, right? So Viktor Frankl said that in between our stimulus and our response, there is a space, right? And in that space lies the power that we have to choose our response. And in that choice is our strength and our growth. Right, so the idea there is that there is this little space, right? There is a little something, even if it's so hard to see, right? There's a space between, what happens to you and how you respond to it, right? And again, if we want to really define the word response properly, it is the antithesis of reacting, right? Like when we react, again, we're doing unconsciously, we're doing without any contemplation, without any thought, any consideration, we're just doing, right? Whereas response means that we're honoring that space there, right? We're giving ourselves that space to really, sit there for a moment and really, understand that is our power, right? And that is where, things like growth and strength come from, right? So we can grow through an experience where, somebody triggers us and we process that trigger before responding, and in that way we're growing, we're understanding something about ourselves, and we're kind of growing to a place where we can, do that more habitually and more, more sort of automatically, right? And so So when we practice mindfulness, right, all we're doing when we practice mindfulness is we're paying attention to what is happening as it's happening. And we're doing so with an attitude of sort of, kind of compassionate curiosity, right? Non-judging awareness, right? Just allowing things to unfold, and not kind of categorizing the things that unfold as either being good things or bad things, or whatever they are, right? Instead, just accepting the things that happen, even if that acceptance is a very temporary thing, right? Even if we're just accepting it for right now, right? Just the idea of just kind of looking at things with this open, non-judging curiosity, if you will, right? That's essentially what mindfulness is, right? And so that you can already probably start to see that is quite different from reacting, right? There's no room for reaction in that sort of context, right? Like when we're open to something happening, we're not going to react to it because we're accepting what's happening, right? And so that means that as we practice mindfulness, and as we develop this as a habit within ourselves, which is what happens if you practice something every day for a given amount of time, we then become, automatically responsive rather than reactive. And what that means is that there's going to be fewer and fewer times in your life where you feel that you want to unring that bell, right? You want to unslam that door. You want to unyell at your child. You want to insult one of your friends. You want to undo something that you've done, right? Once we get into a habit of response versus react, then we're no longer, there's no longer a need for that regret. Like, it just doesn't happen anymore, right? And that, my friends, is a beautiful, beautiful time. Okay, it's a beautiful feeling when that happens, and when we can really have that level of control over, and sort of regulation over our emotions, which is where the reaction comes from, right? So how do we do this, right? So there's a couple of different ways to practice mindfulness. One of which is formal meditation, right? So when you sit, you get into a particular position, which, as I've said here before, it doesn't have to be a fancy position or a complicated position of crossing legs and sitting in a certain way. It can be just as simple as sitting in a chair, just like I am now, right? But just sitting with an intentional sort of position, right? And as simply as putting your feet flat on the floor, your hands just gently on your lap, and sort of closing your eyes and just being, sort of present with your body, right? That's what meditation is. And then the way I teach meditation is I teach my clients to focus their attention on their breath, right? So that's a very embodied kind of meditation, right? We're focusing on a specific process of our body, which is the breath, the in and out of the breath, which is constant, which is always present, which is always with us, which is always happening even when we're not thinking about it, right? So the idea is to focus our attention on that process of the body, again, which is always there for us. And by doing that, what we do is we focus on the present, right? We focus on just what is happening right now. Right now, that's a formal practice. We're taking 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and we're dedicating that time to exclusively doing this practice, right? So that's one way. And then a very powerful, and some would say necessary, way to practice mindfulness, right, is that formal meditation, at least for a period of time every day, a few minutes, even like a 30 seconds every day can make a huge difference of just stopping what you're doing and doing that. Okay. Another way of practicing mindfulness is to, simply be present and paying attention to what it is that you're doing at any given time that you're doing things, right? So many things that we do every day, right? Like 95% of the things that we do every day are completely automatic tasks. Right, they're tasks at work that we don't have to think about. They're tasks like driving. They're tasks like cleaning dishes, of doing laundry, of folding laundry, of ironing. There are things like brushing our teeth or taking a shower. There's just all these things in our lives, and again, it's 95% of the things that we do on a daily basis are things that we don't have to pay attention to. right? They're just automatic, right? Like getting in a car. There was a time in your life where you got in a car and you had to think about every single detail that had to do with that car, right? You had to, worry about the position of the steering wheel, the position of your seat, the mirrors, it was a very active and focused, activity of putting your seatbelt on and clicking it in, and, just kind of turning the car on and making sure you had your foot on the right pedal and the gear shifter was in the right place and all that kind of stuff, right? But now, after you've been driving for all these years that you've been driving, you get in any car. If I gave you the keys to any car, I said, okay, this car is that number 48 in the parking lot out there. Go ahead. You don't think twice, right? You jump in the car, you turn the key, you put it in gear, and you start driving, right? So one of the ways in which we practice mindfulness is to pay attention to those things, right? Is to physically pay attention. In fact, I have a meditation that I'd love to give people that's to be played while you're driving, right? And the things that I'm just saying in this meditation, obviously, we're not closing our eyes and we're not paying attention just to our breath because we're driving, and that would be very dangerous, right? But instead, what we're doing is we're just, I'm just talking about the sort of concept of just being present with what you're doing, just really paying attention to it. Feel the steering wheel in your hands. Feel your body in the seat beneath you, right? Notice what color cars are around you. Notice whether there's clouds in the sky, and also notice the fact that your car is moving through space, right? Like you're sitting still, right? But you're moving. And so sensing that movement, right? That is something that can ground you into the present, activity of driving your car. And when we do that, what we're doing is we're practicing mindfulness because we're paying attention to what's happening as it's happening. And we're doing so without any kind of judgment. And we're doing so with an open sort of curiosity and an acceptance, even a temporary acceptance, right? But now there's a third way that we can practice mindfulness, which is kind of a combination of the two formal and informal practices. And this is what I want to talk to you today about. It's very simply pausing. Okay, just again, that quote from Viktor Frankl tells us that there's a space right in between what we're experiencing and how we're going to react to it or respond to it, right? And when we pause, right, when we just sit and simply give ourselves a moment and just pause, just instead of again, reacting has no pause to it. So when we consciously and intentionally pause, even for a couple of beats, like a couple of breaths, we change the dynamic of that sort of experience and response, right? We create more of that space, right? Which is what, meditation does, which is what, just practicing mindfulness as you're washing dishes, you tend to just, kind of create more space there. But what you can do though, is you can practice pausing throughout the day. Right now, what this means is that you're simply going to, just now you can do this as when something strong happens to you, like when you feel yourself, emotionally sort of alive, like something's happening, something's cooking inside of you. You can just at that point use that as a cue and just give yourself a moment to just stop what you're doing. Just for even, ideally it's a minute or two, but it can even be like 10 seconds, right? Just pausing and just sensing into what's happening in your body, right? Or you could do it as a routine thing, right? You can do it like throughout the day, right? You can do it like every day when you first get to the office, and then when you just before you take your lunch, and then just sometime in the middle of the afternoon when you have that cup of coffee in the middle of every afternoon, and then just before you leave the office, something like that. You can do, you can play around with it, whatever works for you, but you can set these times during the day in which you are just going to pause. And when you do the pause, right? Or you could also just set a timer. You could, there's many ways in which you can integrate this into your life. But the idea is that the more routinely we do this, the more it becomes habitual, right? And what that means is that, as it becomes a habit, it means that when things are happening to us throughout our lives, our daily lives, we have the sort of automatic response that we're always going to just take a breath. And before we react to something, we're going to take a breath and we're going to then respond. So how do you practice the pause? Like I said, you can set it up any time, of the day that you want. And those are just a few examples. If you'd like some more advice, please hit me up with a comment, send me a message, and we can talk it through. I can certainly come up with some, method that will work for you. But the idea is that in these times when you're practicing the pause, what you want to do is, again, first you're going to, the big deal is just to pause, just to not, just stop doing whatever it is you're doing, and just stop and just be with yourself, right? And then as you're in this space and as you're pausing, you want to just examine three main areas of your experience, right? The first thing you're going, well, it doesn't even have to be in any order, but the three things that you're going to experience or just pay attention to are the sensations of your body, right? So first, just notice, like if you're sitting in a chair, just notice your butt in the seat, notice your feet on the floor, notice your back in the back of the chair, or if you're not sitting in a seat, if you're standing up, notice the muscles holding your body up, notice the feeling of your feet, on the floor, notice, is your hand resting on something, just notice what's happening to your body, right? And then, as you get to do this more and more often, you might start to feel sensations. And certainly if you're doing this around something, like if you're doing the pause as sort of in response to something that happened to you, right? Like you get into an argument with someone, or you have something happens with one of your kids, you want to give yourself that pause. Then notice the sensations in your body. Notice, do you have a tightness in your chest? Do you have a heat in your ears? Do you have a dry catch in your throat? Do you have, is there something shaking? Is there something, what's happening in your body? Just examine the sensations, right? Now, you want to now examine the emotions that you're feeling, right? Just experience them. Just be present and say, am I feeling happy? Am I feeling hopeful? Am I feeling shame? Am I feeling guilt? Am I feeling jealousy? Am I feeling anger? What is it that I'm feeling? Literally, just name it. Just give yourself a moment. Just name the emotion that you're feeling, okay? And then finally, and again, this doesn't have to be in this order. You could do it in whatever order you want, because it's a cycle. So these things are all connected to each other. So it's just which one you put in the middle, right? The thoughts, the emotions, the sensations of your body are all a cycle, right? And they all work with each other, and there's no separating them, right? They're all part of the same process. So this last part is your thoughts, right? And just notice what thoughts you're feeling right now, what you're experiencing right now. Just and specifically as you're examining these thoughts, these emotions, and these sensations in your body, see if you can kind of just let them go. See if you can just let them do what they're doing and not sort of attach them to yourself to them, right? So with the thoughts, a lot of times we what I like to think of is taxi cabs, right? Like it's my choice. If I'm seeing a taxi cab pass by on the street, it's my choice to put my hands up and get the taxi cab to pull over so I can get in it and follow it wherever it's going, or I can simply just watch it go by. Right? So see if you can do that while you're in this pause. See if you can just let the emotions just be and just watch them kind of process through your body. Same thing with the physical sensations, and the same thing with your thoughts. Okay? So if you do this a few times every day, again, this is another way in which we can practice mindfulness, right? Now, it doesn't have to be all three. It can be just one of these three, and you're still going to get enormous benefits from it, right? But the idea is to practice at least one of these things on a daily basis, because then again it becomes habit, it becomes the routine, it becomes your go-to way of sort of experiencing your life, right? And these things are going to be much more beneficial because they're not going to be, you're not going to ever look back and say, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that, I wish I could undo what I just did, right? Because you're giving yourself that space. All right. So thanks for listening to this rather long video. I'm going to pause now and kind of wrap this up. And so I want to thank you, and I want to tell you, though, if you have any questions about this, or if you want to explore different ways in which you can practice this pause, I'd be more than happy to help you figure that out. Okay. So please drop a comment below, send me a direct message. Let's get into a conversation and see if I can help you to implement this, because just this practice alone can be the first step to you developing a very strong practice of mindfulness that will benefit you in so many different ways. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Take care. I wish you well.